All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about something that pretty much dictates how we feel every single day: inflammation. And no, I'm not talking about when you get a cut or a bruise. We're diving into that slow, steady burn happening inside our bodies, and most importantly, how the food we eat can either fan those flames or, put out the fire for good. So let me ask you this. Do you ever wake up feeling kind of stiff? Or maybe you deal with these nagging aches that just don't seem to quit. What about that mental fog that's just so hard to shake? It's so easy to blame it on getting older or just a bad night's sleep, but the real answer might actually be on your plate. These are all classic signs of chronic inflammation. So let's start by really understanding what this silent fire inside our bodies is all about and why getting a handle on it is so critical. Okay, so it's really important to get the difference here. Acute inflammation, like when you sprain your ankle, that's your body's helpful short-term response to an injury. It's a good thing. But chronic inflammation, that's a whole different beast. It's this low-grade, system-wide state of alert that just never really turns off. Think of it like a constant smoldering fire that can burn for years. And we're not just talking about minor discomfort here. This silent fire is a major factor in some of the most serious health challenges we face. I mean, it's linked to everything from heart disease and diabetes to arthritis and even cognitive decline. So the message here is really clear. Getting this fire under control is absolutely essential for our long-term health. So what's fueling this fire in the first place? Well, a huge part of the answer is, you guessed it, right on our plates. Let's take a look at the top dietary triggers that are basically like pouring gasoline on this internal flame. First up, the big one: added sugar. And listen, we're not talking about the natural sugar you find in a piece of fruit. We're talking about the sugars and the syrups that are added to foods during processing. Everything from sodas and candies to breakfast cereals, and even savory stuff like ketchup and pasta sauces. So how does sugar actually do so much damage? Well, it pretty much launches this multi-pronged attack on our system. It creates these harmful compounds. It can lead to what's known as leaky gut. It messes with the balance of our good gut bacteria, and it directly triggers the release of these inflammatory messengers. It's a real problem. Next on our list are ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. In this category, it goes way beyond what you might think of as typical junk food. We're talking about industrial formulations that have been seriously altered from their natural state. Here's a great rule of thumb. If it has 5 or more ingredients on the label, and some of those are things you can't even pronounce, it's probably a UPF. Think packaged cookies, deli meats, frozen dinners, that kind of stuff. These foods are really designed for a super long shelf life, not for your long-term health. And our third and final fire fueler is unhealthy fats. You've probably heard this before, but not all fats are created equal. While some fats are absolutely essential for our health, others are intensely inflammatory. The absolute worst offenders here are trans fats, which you can usually spot on a label as partially hydrogenated oils. These are truly Frankenstein fats. They wreak havoc on our cholesterol levels, they directly damage the lining of our blood vessels, and they basically just flip the on switch for inflammation all over the body. Okay, that was the bad news, but here's the really good news. We have an entire arsenal of delicious foods that act like fire extinguishers. So let's meet the dietary heroes that can help us put out those flames. First up, we've got omega-3 fatty acids. If those unhealthy fats are fueling the fire, you can think of these as the internal lubrication for your joints and a protective shield for your cells. So how do they actually work? Well, omega-3s directly suppress those inflammatory messengers we talked about earlier, and they help the body actively resolve inflammation. You can find these powerhouses in fatty fish like salmon and sardines, and also in great plant sources like walnuts and flax seeds. Next, let's talk about those vibrant compounds that give plants their amazing colors and their protective power: polyphenols and antioxidants. These are basically your body's personal team of cellular bodyguards. Their main job is to go around neutralizing these damaging molecules called free radicals, which are a huge source of the stress that leads to inflammation. And you know the best part? They're found in some of the most enjoyable foods out there: berries, dark leafy greens, olive oil, and yes, even your morning coffee or a nice piece of dark chocolate. And our final fire extinguisher is one that is so important, but it's often overlooked, and that's fiber. Think of it as the ultimate guardian of your gut health. Now, what's really interesting here is that fiber's main job isn't just about, digestion. It's about feeding the trillions of good bacteria in your gut.
A happy, well-fed microbiome is absolutely essential for regulating your immune system and keeping that silent fire in check. So load up on beans, oats, all kinds of veggies, and seeds.
Now that we know the heroes and the villains, let's just clear up some common confusion. I mean, there's so much conflicting information out there, so let's separate fact from fiction on a couple of really big topics. First one is dairy, a friend or a foe. The myth is that all dairy is inflammatory, period. But the reality is, it's much more nuanced than that. It really depends on the type. While some full-fat cheese can be high in saturated fat, fermented products like yogurt or kefir actually contain probiotics that can be anti-inflammatory because they support your gut health. And what about the whole nightshade controversy? You hear this a lot, that tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants make arthritis worse. Look, for the vast majority of people, the science shows this is simply not true. These vegetables are packed with powerful antioxidants that can actually help fight inflammation. So unless you have a very specific sensitivity, there's really no reason to avoid them.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground. Now let's get practical. Let's focus on putting all this into practice with some really simple swaps that don't require you to totally overhaul your entire life overnight.
Remember, this is about progress, not perfection. Instead of a burger, why not try a big, juicy, grilled portobello mushroom? Swap out those French fries for some delicious baked sweet potatoes. Ditch the sugary soda for refreshing green tea. These small changes, when you do them consistently, they can lead to some huge results. And if you need one last piece of motivation, just consider this. Research shows that swapping just 2% of your daily calories from those harmful trans fats to healthier options is linked to a staggering 23% lower risk of heart disease. I mean, that's just proof of how powerful our small, everyday choices can really be. So the bottom line is this. Food is one of the most powerful tools we have to control inflammation and to really take charge of our health. It's time we start using it to put out that fire. So my question for you is, what's one fire-fueling food you can swap out this week? Thanks for tuning in.